Good morning. Welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. Cedar Lane is a liberal religious community where we gather to explore the eternal, nurture community, and build a more just world. We are a community where love works. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are in your spiritual journey, and whatever your life circumstance, you are welcome here. I welcome those who are joining our service virtually, whether you're streaming right now or catching up with the service later. We're so glad that you joined us for worship. If you are new to Cedar Lane, we have a small gift for you. So if you're new here this morning, would you mind raising your hand for just a second so that we can get that gift to you? We're so glad that you chose to join us this morning for worship. All are invited to linger after the service to enjoy coffee and conversation. And if you choose to use a yellow mug, our members and friends will be sure to greet you. Before we move into our time of worship, I'd like to call your attention to the news insert in your order of celebration for more about what's happening at the church right now. I have just a couple of things to highlight. One is this Friday. I hope that you'll join us for a welcome event. It's part of our startup for Hillary Collins Gilpatrick, our new Director of Religious Education. It'll be here in the sanctuary, 7 p.m. this Friday, and I hope you can all make it. And then the next day, on this Saturday, Cedar Lane is excited to host a phone bank in cooperation with the Reeb Voting Rights Project and All Souls in D.C. to help get the vote out in North Carolina, where there have been numerous voter suppression efforts. For more information about the phone bank and to learn more about other volunteer opportunities, please go to our election and voter registration table in the lounge after the service. Today in our service, we share our offering plate with the Unitarian Universalist United Nations Office, which is engaged in international advocacy work at the UN based on UU values. From involvement in the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights to leading the Faith Caucus to establish the International Criminal Court, to overcoming UN apathy about sexual orientation and gender identity issues, the UU United Nations Office has a long history of providing strong leadership in all aspects of human rights at a policy level through their UN consultative status. Some of their current program areas include Commit to Respond, a climate justice initiative, their Every Child is Our Child project, which provides school supplies and health care cards to children who have been made vulnerable by HIV and AIDS in Ghana, advocacy around women's rights and women's health, and their Racial Justice program, which is committed to addressing structural anti-Black racism at the international level. I ask that you please give generously to support the UU United Nations Office, which helps to affirm and promote our goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And now we have one more announcement from Alan Bergstein about our upcoming concert. Alan?
Thank you. Good morning, and Shana Tova, good year to you all. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of Henry Segrisi, our wonderful director of music, who's away this weekend, and the concert committee to announce the return of concerts at Cedar Lane. This is the 8th year that we've been providing concerts at Cedar Lane, and we should all be proud of the diversity and the range of performances that we've enjoyed and hosted over those years. This year, the concert committee is particularly excited about the performances that we'll be offering over the next several months. And we start next Saturday, October 15th at 7:30 by presenting two gifted young vocalists who've already made their name on the concert stage, Colin Eaton and Marlissa Hudson. Colin and Marlissa will be offering an evening of songs chronicling their love, friendship, and faith. And as a sneak preview, during the offertory, will be enjoying their performance of the duet Tamami Adir, Tell Me You Love Me, from Don Pasquale. So come to the concert next Saturday, October 15th at 7:30. Take this wonderful flyer with you. out of your order of celebration. And as Henry would say, give it to a friend and bring them along. See you Saturday.
Of worship, let us enter this time of peace.
And justice. Come into this community where we can dream and believe in those dreams. Come into this holy space where we remember who we are and how we want to live. Come now and let us worship together. As Jean Moyer comes forward to kindle the chalice, please rise in body and or in spirit to share in unison the words printed in your order of celebration. We kindle our flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In the search for truth, may we be just. In the quest for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find and live peace. Please remain as you are to sing our opening hymn, This Is My Song, number 159 in your great hymnal.
This morning is a special morning. This morning we are welcoming our intern minister, Norman Allen, through a ritual of commissioning. Norman, you have sought a congregation to companion you on this path towards ministerial fellowship, to nurture your gifts and receive your religious service and leadership. Cedar Lane has agreed to be this teaching congregation.
As a member of Cedar Lane's ministerial team, you enter into a covenant of mutual support, collaboration, and selfless service. Literally. As the ministerial team leader, I welcome you as a colleague among us. Join in the gifts and challenges of ministerial service, and there will be many, at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church.
Norman, as your primary mentoring colleague, I commit to grant you the freedom to allow your call to ministry to unfold according to its own path, with guidance so that you do not carry the challenges, of which there are many, of ministry alone. Norman, I invite you to join us in congregational life as our intern minister, as both a student of ministry and as a ministerial presence. So I hope he says yes to this. Do you accept this invitation to receive and offer ministry with us?
I most certainly do. Mindful of its privileges and its responsibilities, I take up the ministry to which you commission me. I do pledge myself, so far as it lies in me, to speak truth and love, both publicly and privately, and to fulfill the offices of the ministry to the best of my abilities. It is with understanding and with faith that I pledge myself to continue our mutual search, to nurture and kindle curiosity, to encourage growth and sensitivity, to foster a sense of wonder about the universe, and to act courageously in our quest for truth, for peace, and for justice.
Let us now join together in reciting the commissioning words of welcome that are printed in your order of celebration. Norman Allen, we celebrate that you have chosen to learn from and to serve Cedar Lane, and we honor your call to ministry that has brought us together. As a congregation and as individuals, we covenant to take seriously our responsibilities as a teaching congregation, nurturing your gifts of religious leadership and inviting you into the joys, sorrows, and challenges of our lives and our shared life together. We welcome you as our intern minister.
Thank you.
And now we make this official by offering this robe. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Avi. Thank you.
Peace, peace, let the world know peace. Peace, peace, let the world know peace and friendship. Yum, papa, 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 yum, papa. Freedom, 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 let us live in freedom. Freedom, freedom, let us live in freedom, freedom. Papa, yum, 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 papa, yum. Shalom, shalom,
We gather, as we always gather, in sacred space, a place set aside as a sanctuary amid the many challenges of life, a center from which we may gather strength to face these challenges with courage, with grace, and with a spirit of justice. In this time of reflection and remembrance, we lift up those in our community who are living through significant passages, the small and extraordinary milestones of life. We congratulate Maureen McNulty and Jim Eaton on their wedding at Cedar Lane on September 24th. We also extend congratulations to Cedar Lane member Pratima Dharm, who passed the UU Ministerial Fellowship Committee and was welcomed into fellowship as a UU minister. And we celebrate with our Minister Emeritus, Reverend Dr. Kenneth McLean, on his 90th birthday on October 4th. Ken will be moving into an apartment at Asbury Village later this month. Ken, we send our heartfelt congratulations. We continue to hold in our hearts and all those whose lives are lost and whose loved ones' lives are lost to violence and calamities in our world. Especially this week, we hold those in Haiti and other islands and coastal regions who have experienced the harsh forces of nature as victims of Hurricane Matthew. May these friends of ours, our companions in the world, and all that lives unspoken in our hearts be held in the embrace of prayer, in the peace of shared silence, and then in song.
Let us center ourselves in prayer, meditation, or reflection. In this time of turning, in this time of taking stock of our lives, of being mindful of the ways in which we failed to live up to the high ideals and values that we hold close to our hearts, in this time of recommitment as we begin again in love, in this season of forgiveness, atonement, at-one-ment. I invite us to listen to these words from the Reverend Mark Bellatini. Let's set it all down, you and me, the disappointments, little and large, the frustrations. Let's open our fists and drop them. The useless waiting, the obsession with what we cannot have, the focus on foolish things, the pinwheeling worry which wears us out, the fretting, let's throw them down. The comparisons of ourselves with others, the competition as if domination was the best name we could give to God, the cynical assumptions, the unspoken shelved anger, let's toss them. The inarticulate suspicions, the self-doubt, the preemptive self-dumping, the numbing bouts of self-pity, let's sink them all like stones. Like stones in the pool of this gift of silence. Let's drop them like hot rocks into the cool silence. And when they're gone, let's lay back gently and float. Float on the calm surface of the silence. And let's be supported in this still cradle of the world, newborn, ready for anything. As we enter the stillness that silence brings, I invite those among us who are remembering a loved one or commemorating the anniversary of the loss of a loved one to please rise in body and or in spirit and to remain until the hymn. Let us enter the silence together. In the name of all that is holy, life-affirming, and life-sustaining, we say Shalom, Salam, Om Shanti, Amen. Blessed be.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
Thank you, Grupo Piccolo, for joining us in worship and sharing your musical gifts. And now you are blessed and released. On this third annual UN Sunday, we focus on our call to be peacemakers, peace builders, to attain the UN Charter's goal to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which grows out of our covenanted commitment to build a world community with peace, justice, and liberty for all, our sixth principle. Now, I personally prefer the term peace building to peacemaking. Not that there's anything wrong with the word peacemaking. There isn't, actually. It's a good word. It's actually a biblical word. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God, as Rabbi Jesus said. But is there a difference, a distinction to be made between peacemaking and peace building? And does it really matter? Well, in contemporary conflict theory, the two terms do have different meanings, and they do matter. Peacemaking refers to a process aimed at arriving at an agreement, a settlement between warring factions through negotiation or mediation. Peace building is a longer process and comes after peacemaking. It is deeper reconciliation, normalizing of relationships, and helping peace become the new normal, a sustainable way of living. Now, the term peace building first emerged in the 1970s through the work of Norwegian sociologist Johan Galtung, who called for the creation of peace building structures to promote sustainable peace by addressing the root causes of violent conflict and supporting indigenous grassroots capacities for peace management and conflict resolution. And in this context, peace building is reducing the harm when humans live together. And as peace builders, we engage in a process of building trust, harmony, collaboration, mutual security, mutual understanding of differences where there might otherwise be divergence and violence in a preemptive way. And so peace building is an active way of being in peace. Now, peace building became a familiar concept within the United Nations following Secretary General Boutros Ghali's 1992 report, An Agenda for Peace, which defined peace building as action to solidify peace and avoid relapse into conflict. The 2000 report of the Panel on United Nations Peace Operations, also known as the Brahimi Report, defined it as, and I quote, activities undertaken on the far side of conflict to reassemble the foundations of peace and provide the tools for building on those foundations something that is more than just the absence of war. End of quote. I think the last part, peace as being seen more than just the absence of war, is important for us to keep in mind and consider. Now, it almost goes without saying that being a peace builder or even a peacemaker, working for lasting peace and reconciliation, is extremely hard work, not just at the global level, but also at the local level and in our own lives. If we look around the world in which we live today, we see major threats to global peace. The atrocities being perpetrated by ISIS, the genocide being committed by the Assad regime with Russia's assistance in Syria, conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Libya, Mali, South Sudan, Ukraine, and Yemen, the ongoing conflict, decades-long conflict between Israel and Palestine, and the ongoing settler colonization of Palestine that has ruined lives and neighborhoods while posing a serious threat to regional and global peace, a nuclear saber-rattling North Korea, and the simmering conflict between nuclear neighbors India and Pakistan over Kashmir hammer home to us the full cost of the failure of the international community and international organizations like the United Nations to prevent conflict and promote peace. Ongoing conflicts such as these create insecurity, massive human rights violations, and refugee flows that affect the conditions of peace locally, regionally, and globally. At the same time, challenges such as economic inequality, climate change, and radicalization further diminish the prospect of peace for people around the world. And if unaddressed, these challenges spark new violent conflicts. While the United Nations has been successful in some of its peacekeeping and peace-building efforts, and in many ways helped avert a third world war, it remains at the same time that it has had to deal with many mini third world wars and has had mixed success in being an effective peacekeeper and a peace builder. I yearn for leaders who would think more creatively about international conflict, who know how to use diplomacy more effectively, who have the courage to disengage from the fetters of the military-industrial complex, and who are willing to actively engage with the systemic challenges like poverty and inequality that lead to conflict and get in the way of a sustainable peace. And I wish we wouldn't rely so much on war and military violence to end conflict. We continue to see that war is the dominant reality of our times. We as a species have a terrible love of war. We rationalize and justify our war addiction by implicitly accepting that war is a necessary evil, and therefore at times it is morally just. And some of that thinking emanates from the just war theory that was first proposed by St. Augustine and then elaborated on by Thomas Aquinas and was promulgated by the Catholic Church. A theory which is based on the claim that sometimes military action is necessary to establish and sustain an equitable and enduring peace. The just war theory was developed to address conflicts between nation states. Many Unitarians and Universalists supported both world wars on the basis of this theory. And the just war theory is also based on the mistaken assumption that all wars can be fought and won like World War II, which has been called into question with our recent misadventures in Iraq, in Afghanistan, Libya, and now Syria. Now, while Unitarian Universalism is not an avowed peace church like the Quakers and the Mennonites are, our faith still challenges us to build and sustain a culture of peace at all levels of human interaction, namely in the world, in our nation, in our congregations, in our families, and within ourselves. That is the spiritual challenge, the moral imperative that we are invited not only to consider, but actively embody. At least that's what the Creating Peace Statement of Conscience that was passed by an overwhelming majority at the 2010 UUA General Assembly in Minneapolis calls us to do. The first paragraph states, "We believe all people share a moral responsibility to create peace. mindful of both our rich heritage and our past failures to prevent war, and enriched by our present diversity of experience and perspective, we commit ourselves to a radically inclusive and transformative approach to peace. A radically inclusive and transformative approach to peace. Now, the statement of conscience is a policy statement. It is addressed primarily to Unitarian Universalists as a guide to our work as individuals, congregations, and as an association of congregations. Its purpose is to get us thinking and reflecting and dialoguing and acting. We're challenged to ask ourselves, how do I, as a freedom-loving, free-thinking, and as some would say, tofu-eating, Birkenstock-wearing individual, we are, aren't we, respond to this call to learn about creating peace? And what am I, religiously, morally, and ethically obligated to do about it? This allows us to bring peace at a personal level. And we are dared to confront it and to embody it in our lives. So all that we are required to bring is the willingness and the openness to engage more deeply and thoughtfully on our own life experiences and how we have gone about being in peace within ourselves, in our relationships, and in our communities. So the question is, where do we begin? And as I said last week, we begin with ourselves. As the legendary founder of Taoism, Lao Tse, said, if there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace among neighbors. If there is to be peace among neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. And so it goes. Again and again. We are being invited to take what is called a praxis-oriented approach, a reflection, action, reflection model of living out our commitment to peace. As I said last week in the context of exploring Mahatma Gandhi's ahimsa, cultivating inner peace is the first step in creating a peaceful world. We can be peace builders in the small actions of our daily lives by loving ourselves more fully instead of constantly criticizing ourselves, by practicing compassion and forgiveness towards others as well as ourselves, by acting from love instead of our fear, and living more gently, more sustainably on Mother Earth. And then we work on peace in the home. Now, peace in the home is more than just the absence of violence, physical, sexual, emotional, or verbal, even though many families do not experience even this basic kind of peace. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. According to the Domestic Violence Resource Center, 1 in 4 women will experience an episode of domestic violence in their lifetime. 1 in 4. Often children are also victims. 1 in 4 women in our nation, in our society, even in this sanctuary. Peace in the family means the presence of kindness and understanding and mutual respect. Families that live in peace will still have disagreements and conflict. Family members will continue to hurt and disappoint each other. But the peaceful family works through these challenges and issues, always seeking peaceful solutions, approaching them in peaceful ways, and practicing compassion and forgiveness toward one another. Now, is this something we all know how to do instinctively or by virtue of being Unitarian Universalists? Of course not. We come by it imperfectly by making an intentional commitment to learn and practice nonviolent communication, nonviolent ways of being in right relationship with our loved ones while unlearning toxic and dysfunctional ways of relating that we may have picked up through our own family and life experiences. And only then can we focus on peace among our neighbors. Now, what might peace among our neighbors look like in the context of a religious community? Let me tell you a joke. So some UUs were out raking leaves and trimming bushes outside their church grounds, and they stumbled upon this old oil lamp, ornate oil lamp. What the heck, they said. We've got mystic pragmatism in our tradition, so let's just rub it and see what happens. And so they did. And guess what? A genie appeared. And the genie said, channeling Robin Williams, "Ask me anything and I shall grant it." So the UUs rolled out a map of the Middle East. They were all active members of UUJME, Unitarian Universalists for Justice in the Middle East. There is an organization, folks. And if you don't know about it, check it out. They do good work. And they pointed to this country and that country and asked for peace. So the genie said, "Gosh, come on, guys. I'm not God, and those countries have been at it for hundreds of years. Ask for something easier." So the UUs said, "Well, how about no more conflict between people in the congregation?" And the genie said, "Let me have another look at that map." Now, this, of course, was not at Cedar Lane, so we're good to go. But, as it is in every joke, there is an element of truth in it. Our congregational lives, we find ourselves in situations of conflict and disagreement, and we stumble over each other and over ourselves, trying to figure out a way to negotiate our disagreements without being disagreeable. And being a conflict-averse, conflict-avoidant faith community that we are as Unitarian Universalists, we really have a lot of discomfort around conflict. But we all know this. There is no way around conflict, only through. And for that, we need to develop the spiritual tools that are necessary to be able to work through our disagreements. So what might that look like? Everybody would share an understanding that as a faith community that affirms the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in our congregations and in society at large. Our fourth principle, we may not always get our way, but our voice will always be heard. There would be no tyranny of the majority, let alone the tyranny of the minority. Disagreements would be about issues, about things, not people. That people with whom we may have a disagreement with would not be demonized simply for having a different opinion than our own, a different belief than our own, a different political affiliation than our own. But this isn't just about being well-behaved. That's the least of it. It's about figuring out how we are going to do what we have said that we want to do as a congregation, a community where we say love works, which is to help every member discover that source of love in their own lives and have the ability to act out that love in ever-expanding circles of trust and compassion and friendship. It's about committing ourselves to cultivate the difficult and fragile art of hospitality of the heart and hand, even to those who we don't agree with or don't even like. That's the tough part. That's what Rabbi Jesus reminded us when he said, "Love thy neighbor." Of course, he didn't say, "Like thy neighbor." So you can still love someone without liking them. That's the thing. That's what the inherent worth and dignity of every person means. And if we can learn to cultivate that peace among ourselves within our congregation, then we can hope to take what we have learned into the larger community, hopefully helping to heal the heart of democracy that has been so wounded and tarnished in this election cycle. And then we may be able to extend that peace into our cities and into our nation. And what might that look like? Fewer guns, stricter gun control, greater police accountability, greater community policing, a more deeper partnership between the police, law enforcement, and the communities that they have been called to serve and to protect. Looking upon violence as a public health risk rather than as a character flaw that somehow exists in certain people and not in others. These are ways in which we could be cultivating peace, demilitarizing our police. Then we can think about peace in the world. And to create peace in the world, we certainly must be willing to address the underlying things that breed war and violence, poverty and hunger, hopelessness and insecurity, racism and sexism, homophobia and xenophobia, inequality and corruption. We must commit to act to dismantle these in our own communities and in our nation, which then allows us, gives us the moral fiber, not only the moral efficacy, to be working on it on a global level. And in such a way, we can be strong advocates for nonviolent action using peaceful tools for social change and transformation. Now, I'm not naive enough, nor am I a pacifist who believes that holding hands and singing Kumbaya or Imagine would bring about peace in the world. It's a good start, but it doesn't. Especially when we cannot stand by and watch nations commit genocide against their own people or become safe havens for those who promote indiscriminate and wanton violence. But at the same time, we need to recognize that violence will never create a sustainable peace. Responding to violence with more violence will only beget more violence, as Dr. King said. Making peace requires a fundamental respect for all parties. It requires honesty and integrity of action. It requires a willingness to talk without preconditions. And even if it is hard, we have to consider alternative models proposed by Mahatma Gandhi or Dr. King that challenge us to always choose nonviolence as the primary guiding principle of how we will live in the world, and to look for systemic solutions through nonviolent struggle. And that's what we are called to be as peacemakers and peace builders. So I invite us to turn inward and hear and affirm these words. Today, may we rededicate ourselves to being peace builders and following the path of nonviolence. May we deepen our awareness of the violence with us and our compassion for the common humanity we share. May we choose love and care as the source of our actions, and may we respect our limits and the limits of others. And if we must use force, may it be in the service of life and the greater embracing love that holds us all, that will not let us go. So may it be. Blessed be. As the ushers come forward to give and receive the offering that sustains the work and ministry of Cedar Lane Unitarian and the work of the UU United Nations Office, I invite us to continue to ponder what it means to be peace builders. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. Thank you for your generosity.
All the gifts that we bring and share to make this a beloved community, may we be grateful. Please rise in body and or in spirit to sing "Gonna Lay Down My Sword and Shield," number 162 in your great hymn.
Please remain as you are for these words from the poet Maya Angelou. We, this people on a small and lonely planet, traveling through casual space, past aloof stars, across the way of indifferent suns, to a destination where all signs tell us it is possible and imperative that we learn a brave and startling truth. And when we come to it, to the day of peacemaking, when we release our fingers from fists of hostility and allow the pure air to cool our palms, we, this people, on this small and drifting planet, whose hands can strike with such abandon that in a twinkling life is sapped from the living, yet those same hands can touch with such healing, irresistible tenderness that the haughty neck is happy to bow and the proud back is glad to bend. Out of such chaos, of such contradiction, we learn that we are neither devils nor divines. When we come to it, we, this people, on this wayward floating body, created on this earth, of this earth, have the power to fashion for this earth a climate where every man and every woman can live freely without sanctimonious piety, without crippling fear. When we come to it, we must confess that we are the possible, we are the miraculous, the true wonder of this world. That is when, and only when, we come to it. Go in peace. Go making peace, go building peace, living gently, loving mightily, and bowing to the great mystery. Please be seated for the postlude.